Hey, if you've been watching some of my most recent videos, then you've seen this guitar. This video is going to be another one on this guitar. If you have been keeping up, then you know I've been doing a series of about 30-ish videos about how I built this. This is a partscaster. It does say Fender on it, so take it for what you will. But I didn't go out and cut a tree down and shape the body and route out the cavities and stuff like that. I did get an unfinished body. I wanted a two-piece alder lightweight body under 4 pounds, so I did that. I got a neck, finished my specifications as far as the fretwork and the size and shape of the profile and the fret sizes, the nut, all that stuff, but it was unfinished. So I've got videos on how I finished. It's all nitrocellulose as well, so you know what pickups I put in it, what color of plastic, how I reliced everything. So be sure to check out the series, the playlist on this guitar if you're interested in learning more about it. If you do watch regularly or you have seen some of my previous videos, you might know that I'm in a different space. My family has actually sold our house. We're in an apartment for the time being, temporarily, and so right now I'm in a bathroom. It's not the best of setups, and so it's going to be a little tricky doing some videos in the meantime while we're here, but I'm going to do the best that I can with that. Now this video is going to talk about something a little odd when you're talking about building guitars or putting a guitar together. I'm going to talk about how I took a wire brush to some of the wood, the exposed wood on this guitar, namely like this area and the back, like maybe right here. So I got the idea just reading some forums and looking at other projects that people had done and some other just random woodworking projects about making aged wood or making wood look like it's older than it is. So I got the idea and I kind of tried it out. And so this, I'm going to show you a close-up result of what I've got right now. The video focuses in particular on this area of the guitar. And I'll show you what it looks like in the current state and sort of like some pros and cons of what I did. Really, this is what it looks like now. So what you see in the video is sort of what I did. Now, I will say that what you won't see in the video is after I did all that, I actually took a razor blade, like a razor blade you find in a pack, and I went in through some of this figuring and I kind of just followed the lines so they can pop out a little bit more. But the video will show you a little bit more about what I did as far as the wire brush goes. So the end goal in this endeavor was to make the wood, the wood grain to pop out more, to look a little bit more weathered, and that's it really, just the grain to pop out, the figuring and everything to just stand out. Now if you look at, and this guitar is roughly, and I say roughly, I mean not much at all, it's just a heavy Relic black guitar, but roughly based on John Mayer's black one. That's sort of kind of the idea behind it, kind of what birthed it a little bit. If you look at his guitar, it seems like in most of the pictures or videos you see of it, you can really see a lot of the grain and the figuring, and it may have to do a lot with the wood, I don't know. And I've seen some other Fender Custom Shop Relic guitars where it looks like they've done some kind of treatment to the wood to make the figuring and the grain pop out. So I didn't know, I don't have that knowledge firsthand, I don't have any insider information. This whole guitar was sort of a trial, and I'm really satisfied with it. I think it turned out fantastic. It plays wonderful. I'm satisfied with the pickup selection I went with. It's awesome. I love it, and I'm amazed that I put it together. It means that much more that I actually put it together. So like I said, I've seen some of those Fender Custom Shop sort of like 1960s-ish heavy Relic guitars where the wood just, the grain pops out. Now one thing that could be going on is, you know when you take a photo on your camera or your phone and you edit it in whatever program that you edit in, and you can adjust the contrast, right? So you're adjusting, I don't understand it fully, but the way I understand it is contrast is essentially doing that. It's contrasting like the lighter areas with the darker areas, so it's making them contrast more rather than blend together. And so I'm thinking that some of the pictures that I've seen online, you know, some people have taken the liberty to really turn the contrast up on some of those photos and make the wood pop out, the wood grain pop out. I don't know, you know, who's to say? So I'm just going to show you the video of the trial and error of what I did with wire brushing my guitar. And I will say I did it after the fact. I'll give you the rundown real quickly of how the body kind of went together. And if you see my playlist, you'll see all of this. But what I did is I prepped the body as it was, unfinished, unstained. I took some tea and I took some steel wool dissolved in vinegar, and I put that solution on here to make the wood look really kind of gray and weathered. And then I did my sanding sealer, and I did my nitrocellulose black, and then I did all my clear coats of nitrocellulose. But how I got this Relic look is I taped up the body. So in other words, this part here was covered up with painter's tape. And so when I sprayed it all, it was left untouched by the paint and the nitrocellulose. And when I took the tape off, it looked like this. So I don't know exactly how the Fender Custom Shop does it. I have heard, I believe John Cruz say that they basically make a guitar brand new the way they would, like the way they did in the 1950s or 60s. Of course, given the guitar, but let's just say that you wanted a heavy Relic 1962 or 63. They would finish a guitar almost as if it were brand new from the factory in that day, and then they would relic it. So they would basically like take the paint off, you know, they would ding it up, scratch it up, begin removing that paint by some means, right? Now the idea of wire brushing wood is to, you basically, when you take that wire across it, you remove some of the softer wood and you leave the hardwood. Now what that does is create some like peaks and valleys, and it just gives a distinction to the grain and the figuring of the wood. So if you think of all the ways you could possibly do a guitar like this, one way would be to treat the wood, or to, you know, maybe wire brush the wood and make it look really weathered. But now think about trying to finish a guitar like that. When you finish a guitar to make it brand new, you know, you sand it to a certain amount of grit, maybe 300 or 400 grit, and then you put sanding sealer on it. So you try to make as smooth a surface as possible. And then when you finally get to all your clear coats dry and everything, you know, you do a wet sanding, and you want like a glass mirror finish almost. So think about doing the wood and weathering it before you finish it, and the color seems like it would almost be impossible. The way I did it may not be ideal either, but if the custom shop really does make a brand new guitar and then they start dinging it up, then they've got to almost approach it the same way I did, in that they've got these areas of nice paint, but they have to avoid those and weather somehow the wood. So just some things to think about. In the following clips, you'll just see kind of what I did, how I went about it, and how it went. So I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching, as always. I'm going to do a short video on what happens when you wire brush wood after you stain it. Now most people will say, if you want a sort of an aged look and to bring out the grain of the wood in a way that would look as if it were naturally aged, one tactic or one method is to use a wire brush. And what it does is remove some of the soft wood and leaves the harder wood, and it just accentuates or accents the grain. And so obviously this can apply to any kind of wood, but I've got a guitar here, a Strat, that I'm relicking, and I'm pretty much done with the body, but I wasn't really happy with the way the grain was popping out on the exposed wood parts. So I got the idea to do this, and I went to Harbor Freight, which is a fantastic place for things like this. So I got these three wire brushes for, I guess, finer detail work. Came with a steel brush, a nylon brush, and a brass brush. And this was all under $1. It was 99 cents. So that is just fantastic. And I'm going to do this on sort of this test area right here that, for multiple reasons, I didn't finish this in paint. One was just I wanted the least amount of lacquer on it as possible, just thin coats, and I left a lot of things exposed, all these cavities, but also to just have a place where I can test ideas for the wood without messing anything up. So I'm just going to give this a go, maybe start with the nylon and work up to maybe the steel. Steel's going to be the roughest, and just kind of see what happens, and you can be along for the ride. So let's just start with the nylon, which I don't think is going to do anything. Yeah, that's not doing anything that I know of, or I can tell at the moment. Yeah, so let's move on to the brass. Now I expect this to take some of the stain off, and what I don't want to necessarily have to do is restain. I'd like for it to maybe take off, you know, just some of the stain, make it lighter, and then accent the grain, but we'll see. So here's the brass brush. So you can see the wood coming off, hopefully, and it's coming off some of the color too, and it's taking off some of that soft wood, but it is accenting the grain, and it's also lightening it quite a bit. So just gonna keep going maybe and see what happens. And I am going with the grain, so that's one thing to keep in mind. And all this wood that's coming off is colored. You can see that stained wood coming off. But what I think is happening is some of the wood that's being left is staying dark. So I guess the more I keep doing this, the more stain's gonna come off, and it's just gonna look like this wood in here. So yeah, so I guess if I do it light enough, then it kind of brings out the grain and accomplishes the goal. Now I don't know right now if it's just making it lighter or bringing out the grain. Maybe I'll bring the camera in closer and we can see. Okay, I doubt that you're gonna be able to see this on the camera, but if I rub my fingers across it, it does feel rougher where I did the wire brush. It feels like some of the wood's been removed and that there are kind of like peaks and valleys. But it's not bad. I don't know how to explain it. And for me, I want to lighten up, especially this area and some of the exposed areas. They just seem a little bit too dark and not really grainy enough. So I think I'm going to try this method, this wire brush method, and I guess worst case, I will restain. Maybe I should test out restaining this area, see how that goes. So, One thing that's kind of stumped me with regard to wood grain is, now I understand this wood grain for the most part is going like straight up and down this way, because you can see spots like this, but this wavy part, which I don't know if it's like growth rings or I don't know. I mean, I've looked it up online a little bit and I'm still just kind of confused by what those are and how they flow with the grain. So to wire brush this area, I would think I would go up and down this way, but you know, maybe I could follow this pattern, but then I would get, if it's against the grain, I guess I'll get scratch marks and things. So that is a question that I have and I'm not really sure. Now up here, see, I did, go straight up and down this way, and this line that's going sort of diagonal did show up better. I mean, it's still darker, so yeah, I don't know. So I'm thinking as long as I go up and down that these wavy lines will stay dark and show up better. And then the other thing, one good thing about doing this, I guess, is that any kind of like blotchy spots you can kind of concentrate on to make them lighter. And yeah, so I guess you can sort of even it out as you apply pressure and concentrate on certain areas more than others. So that's one good thing, or one thing I noticed anyway. So what I think I'm gonna do is try to add some stain to this and just see what happens, because I have it on hand and what's it gonna hurt. So I've got my trusty steel wool dissolved in vinegar solution here that I've been using for this project quite a bit. And so I'm just gonna, I've got my brush labeled vinegar steel. I don't want to mix it up with the tea one that I have, and for the time being, I'm not going to use tea in combination. I'm just going to use this and just see what it does. Just let it sit for a little while and see what happens. So, okay, I just applied the steel wool vinegar, and it's still kind of wet right now, so we'll let it dry out and see what the true color looks like. Okay, it's pretty much dry to the touch now. So it looks like it just made it a little more brown, in that it made it darker. The steel wool and vinegar made it darker with the, just the stain and the color in it, but it made it more brown than, say, this area right here, which is more gray. Now I'm assuming that if I put the tea in there that it'll react and make it more gray, but it can also get really dark, which is what happened to a lot of this. It just got a little bit too dark for me, and I sanded some of it back, but again, I just wasn't happy with the way it was turning out. Now the back actually looks pretty good. I don't know, the grain just pops out more, and it could be just because I tried to wet sand the finish, and I'm sure I overlapped on a lot of it, But I also did sand this back some, and for whatever reason the back just looks a little better, just more grain pop. But this area in particular, I'm just not really, it looks kind of just splotchy, and I don't know, I'm not happy with it. So this is an option, I guess. The grain does seem to pop out more, but I guess I'm worried about the coloring, if I can get it to sort of match again. And I'm also worried about if I get the wood wet too close to the finish, the wood could swell and start popping some of this off, which wouldn't be the end of the world because, you know, obviously it's already been popping off, so to speak. It looks old and weathered and relicked, but you know, I don't want it to get out of hand or anything. So that's something that I'm a little bit worried about if I do wire brush it and it's not the color I want and I have to restain it. So that's just, you know, a concern of mine I have right now. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but we'll see. Oh, also watch the video on the neck, the back of the neck that I did, that I'm putting on this guitar, and you can just see how dark the tannin in the tea and the reaction with the steel wool and vinegar, how dark it really gets. Yeah, just check that out to just get a feel for how that works. And also the video on coloring, the base kind of wood color that I originally did with the tea and the steel wool and vinegar. So let me explain what I've done to this area. I got pretty brave, I guess, and I used I started off with the brass bristle brush, and I went to town on this area right here. And you know, I got kind of some scratches at first, so it was a little bit nerve-wracking, but I kept going, and then eventually I moved on to the steel brush once I saw some of the material being removed. And then I also went back with the tea and the vinegar. Now I only did like one tea bag, and whereas before I did a lot of tea bags, so it never really showed up as gray. But I went through a couple of cycles of that. I stained and I brushed it again, and so now it looks more uniform than it did, and I don't know that I like it better, and it's probably not going to show up on the camera, just especially because of the lighting, but it is definitely rougher, and there are some deeper grooves in it, but the grain just still really doesn't pop out like I was hoping. So now I'm going to do a little test. I got this idea. I'm going to use some wood filler, which is a natural color, and I'm going to do this test spot and see just what it looks like with a lighter color filler in there, which actually compared to that, it doesn't really look that much lighter. So we'll see how it goes on this area right here, and then I don't know if I want to brave this. I may end up taking some of that tried and true oil that I got from Stu Mac and put it on this to see what happens. I don't know, or I guess I could redo it again here too. So I'll just inform you of what happens. But for now, I'm just going to put some of this on, and it's not really rocket science. Just going to fill it in and scrape it on and see what happens. So stay tuned. Okay, I've just applied it here and going to let it dry. It's pretty flat. I kind of scraped as much as I could off, like so, or you could use even like a razor blade, but I'm obviously gonna have to sand it. So I'll try to use something rough and go with the grain, and we'll see what happens. I wanted to say that one reason I thought this method might be good is because when I was wet sanding and polishing and trying all my experimentation on the paint for this guitar, in the polishing process, I got what I think is some of that stuff inside of some of the wood areas, and so like there and here on the front, and that lighter color seems to enhance the grain, so it just kind of shows up these little lighter specks and kind of brings out the darker grain. So that's one reason why I thought something like this might work, but again, we're gonna have to see, and I'm gonna have to wait 2 to 6 hours, it says, for this to dry fully before I can sand it, and then really get an idea of what it's gonna look like. I forgot to mention the sanding direction that I did. At first I started going this way towards the neck of the guitar, because again, the two pieces of wood that have been glued together, it was pretty obvious that, like here, you can see, you know, they're glued here in the middle, and both sides the grain is going this direction, which is pretty typical, I think, for guitar building. But down here, so I continued that pattern, but then eventually I kind of switched it up and I started going with, and forgive me for not realizing what this was earlier, but yeah, this is figuring the kind of wavy lines and the pattern there, the grain. So you can see those there, they kind of go this way and they're wavy. So I started going with the figuring with my wire brush, and it seemed to enhance a little bit, especially when I kind of dyed it over and it got darker and was wet, you know, with the tea and the vinegar. But I really, you know, they kind of just blend in now and they don't stick out. I'll try to put a picture up of what the guitar looked like with the natural alder wood and grain, and it almost showed up better then, and it's just been kind of masked now. Somehow I've managed to make it look less figured. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I may just end up, you know, just calling it and leaving it and see what happens over time. But just want to let you know which direction I went, and I went with the figuring. I haven't really read or figured out a lot of good information, especially with alder, what people do. So that's what I did, and that's how it looks for the time being. And there's a nylon. All that stained wood will